The Thresh corridor had been quiet for 211 cycles, and every commander in the conquered fleet had grown to hate that silence. Quiet in the Thresh was not peace. It was the held breath before a knife. The corridor was a narrow lane of navigable space threaded between two dead stars, a place where four empires met and none of them ruled, and for 200 cycles the four had circled one another there like predators too evenly matched to strike. The Velethi kept their gunships at the northern mouth. The Ashan Ascendancy held the southern approach with their spine ships, long and pale and bristling. The conquered compact, the loose alliance of smaller species to which Submarshal Yen Cathal belonged, held the center with a fleet that was larger than any single rival but weaker than all of them combined. And in the deep dark beyond the corridor's western edge, the thing the others did not speak of, the silent reach, watched with instruments no one had ever seen. 4 powers, 1 corridor, 211 cycles of a balance so fine that a single misfired torpedo could have ended a billion lives. Yen Cathal stood on the command deck of the conquered dreadnought Unbroken Meridian and watched the tactical sphere turn slowly above the deck plates, and she thought, as she thought every shift, that the balance would not hold forever. She was of the Sethe people, tall, narrow-boned, her skin the deep blue-gray of deep water, her eyes large and dark and slitted against the glare of stars. She was 140 cycles old, which for a Sethe was barely past the middle of a life, and she wore the balance of the corridor across her shoulders like a yoke of cold iron. "Report," she said. "Nominal," said her sensor officer, a squat Grenic named Dav who had the corridor's every gravitic ripple memorized. "Velethi holding formation at the northern mouth. Ashan spine ships at rest. No movement from the reach. No movement from anyone." He paused. "The usual nothing, Submarshal." "The usual nothing," Yen repeated. She had learned, over 40 cycles of command, to distrust the usual nothing most of all. Nothing was where the knife lived. She was about to order the shift rotation when the sphere changed. It did not change gradually. There was no warning ripple, no gravitic wake, no shimmer of a translation drive winding down. One moment the western dark was empty, the flat, dead, watched emptiness it had been for 211 cycles, and the next moment there was a mark in it. A single contact. It simply was asterisk, the way a word is suddenly on a page, as though it had always been there and the universe had only just remembered to render it. Dav made a sound she had never heard him make, a small, wet click of the throat. "Submarshal," he said, "I have a contact, western edge. Bearing 227, range 4 light seconds and closing slow." His 4 hands moved across his console in a blur. "It's Submarshal," it did not translate in. "There is no drive signature. There is no wake. It is simply their asterisk." "Clean your instruments," Yen said, though a cold thread had already begun to unspool in her chest. "Instruments are clean. I have cross-checked with 3 arrays. The contact is real. It is—" He stopped. When he spoke again, his voice had gone flat with the particular calm of someone reporting a thing too large to feel. "It is a single vessel, approximately 1,100 meters at the keel. Mass reading is wrong, Submarshal. It reads heavier than a vessel that size should. Much heavier." Yen crossed to the sensor station in 3 strides. The contact hung in the sphere, a single hard point of light against the western dark, and around it the tactical system was throwing up query after query and failing to resolve any of them. Configuration, unknown. Registry, none. Faction, none. Drive class, none. Origin, none. "Bring it up," she said. "Optical now." The main display bloomed, and the corridor's distant stars swam into focus, and there in the center of them was the ship. It was not beautiful. That was the first thing Yen thought, and she thought it with something close to relief, because beautiful ships were the ships that lied. Velethi gunships were beautiful, all mirrored curves. Ashan spine ships were beautiful, all pale symmetry. This thing was not beautiful. It was a slab. A long, dark, deliberate slab of a hull gray going to black, its lines broken by turrets and sensor masts and vast armored panels that overlapped like the scales of some deep-water thing. It bristled. Every surface of it seemed to carry a weapon or the housing of one. It looked less like a ship than like a fortress that had grown tired of standing still and decided to move. And along its flank, in characters no conquered system could read, ran a name. "Get me a translation on that hull marking," Yin said. "Working," said her comms officer, a slight Farron named Syl whose feathers had gone flat against her skull. "The characters don't match any registered lexicon. I'm running comparatives against the archive." A pause. "Submarshal, I have a partial. The script matches a fragment in the deep archive. A first contact fragment 300 cycles old. Unverified. The species is catalogued but nobody's seen one. Not in 3 centuries. "Which species?" Syl's throat worked. "The catalog calls them human, Submarshal. The vessel designation best translation is Warship asterisk, just that, human warship." The word landed on the command deck and did not echo because there was nothing in the crew's experience for it to echo against. Human. Yin turned the word over. She had read the fragment once, cycles ago, in the way a young officer reads everything in the deep archive. A species from a far spur of the galaxy, contacted once by a conquered survey ship 300 cycles past, contacted and then never contacted again, because the survey ship had gone dark shortly after and no one had ever learned why. The fragment was 3 lines long. It said the species was carbon-based, bipedal, warm-blooded, and territorial. It said the survey captain had recommended caution, and then it said nothing else forever. "One ship," Yin said, mostly to herself. "One ship, 300 cycles of silence, and it appears in the most contested lane of space in the sector without a drive wake." She straightened. "Syl, are we the only ones who see it?" "No, Submarshal." Syl's voice was very quiet. "Everyone sees it. The Velethi are lighting up. The Ashen are lighting up. The whole corridor just went a full alert. I'm reading target locks. Dozens of them. Every fleet in the Thresh just aimed at that one ship." Yin looked at the slab of a vessel hanging in the western dark, alone, silent, aimed at by the combined firepower of 4 empires, and she waited for it to do something. To raise shields, to power weapons, to run. It did none of those things. It simply held its position, 4 light seconds out, and turned slowly, deliberately, with the unhurried confidence of something that had all the time in the universe, to face the center of the corridor, to face the conquered fleet, to face her. "It's hailing," Syl said, and her feathers stood straight up. "Submarshal, the human ship is hailing us. Audio and visual. The hail is clean. Standard conquered protocol. 300 cycle-old protocol, but clean. It knows how to talk to us." Yin felt the whole weight of the corridor settle onto the deck around her. Somewhere in the northern dark, a Velethi commander was deciding whether to fire. Somewhere in the south, an Ashen warlord was doing the same. And a single unknown ship, alone and unafraid, was asking to speak. "Put it through," she said. The face that filled the display was young. That was what struck Yin first, before she had any framework for what human faces meant, before she could read the small signs that would later mean so much to her. The face was young. It belonged to a male of the species, and by the standards Yin would slowly learn he was barely more than a cub. The smooth skin, the clear eyes, the absence of the deep lines that age carved into flesh. He wore a dark uniform, close-fitted, without ornament except for a single band at each shoulder. His hair was cropped short and dark. His eyes were a pale gray-green, and they were steady, and they were tired in a way that no young thing's eyes should have been. He could not have been more than 30 of his own years old. Later Yin would learn what that meant. Later, she would understand that she was looking at a boy who had been given the loneliest command in the galaxy and had not flinched from it. For now she saw only that he was young, and that he did not look afraid, and that the not looking afraid was somehow more frightening than any threat could have been. "Conquered vessel," the young human said. His voice came through the translator flat and even, and beneath it Yin could hear the strange, soft sounds of the original language. This is Lieutenant Commander Aeld Voss, acting master of the battleship Sable Reckoning, out of the Sol Vanguard. I am transmitting on your protocols as a courtesy. I know I have arrived in a place where I am not expected. He paused, and something moved behind the tired gray-green eyes. I know that every gun in this corridor is pointed at my ship. I would ask you to leave them pointed, and to listen, because what I have to say concerns all of you, and I would prefer to say it only once. Yen Cathal, sub-marshal of the Concord Compact, keeper of the Thresh corridor for 40 cycles, looked at the young human's face and made a decision that would define the rest of her life. This is Sub-Marshal Yen Cathal of the Concord Dreadnought Unbroken Meridian Asterisk, she said. You are addressing the ranking officer in the corridor. Say what you came to say, Lieutenant Commander Voss. We are listening. On the bridge of the Sable Reckoning, Aeld Voss let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like a very long time. He was 29 years old, Earth Standard, and he had been the ship's master for exactly 11 days, and he had not slept for the last 4 of them. The reckoning had translated into this corridor by a drive method that the 4 powers watching him did not understand and could not detect, a silent jump. The Vanguard called it, a way of folding space that left no wake, and it had done so because Aeld had ordered it. And he had ordered it because the alternative was worse than appearing alone in the most dangerous stretch of space he had ever seen. Behind him, the bridge of the Asterisk Reckoning was a low, red-lit cathedral of a space, and it was almost empty. That was the thing the 4 powers did not know, the thing Aeld would have given a great deal to keep them from ever learning. The Asterisk Sable Reckoning was a battleship built for a crew of 600, and it carried, at this moment, 41 living souls. 11 days ago it had carried more. 11 days ago it had carried her master, a gray-haired veteran named Commodore Hale who had taught Aeld everything he knew, and it had carried the Commodore's staff, and it had carried the men and women who had known what to do in a moment exactly like this one. And then it had carried them into a thing in the deep dark between the spurs, a thing the Vanguard had no name for, a wound in space that had reached into the ship and taken 2/3 of her crew and her master, and left the rest of them running blind and silent through the black with a battleship they barely knew how to fly. Aeld had been the 4th officer. He was the master now, because everyone above him was dead. Steady, he murmured to no one, to himself, to the ship. Steady now. They're listening, sir, said Petra Cole, his sensor officer, who was 19 and should have been an ensign for another 2 years, and was instead running the entire sensor suite of a battleship because there was no one else. All 4 powers. The whole corridor's gone quiet. They're waiting on you. Then let's not waste it. Aeld straightened his uniform, though there was no one aboard to see it, and turned back to the pickup. He had rehearsed this. He had rehearsed it for 4 days. Alone in the master's chair, because he understood, young as he was, tired as he was, that the next words out of his mouth were the most important words he would ever say, and that a battleship built to end fleets was not, in this moment, his weapon. His weapon was his voice. His weapon was the appearance of a confidence he did not feel. Because the truth was simple and terrible. The Asterisk Sable Reckoning could not fight 4 empires. She could not fight one. 41 souls could not crew her guns, and the ones they could crew would not last an hour against the massed fleets of the Thresh. If the corridor decided the human ship was a threat, the human ship would die, and Aeld Voss and the last 40 of Commodore Hale's people would die with it. His only chance, the only chance any of them had, was to be so large in their minds that no one dared to be the first to shoot. So he would not be a lost boy in a wounded ship. He would be the vanguard of something enormous. He would be the first ripple of a wave the whole galaxy would fear to see break. He looked into the pickup, and he let his tired eyes go flat and cold, and he began to lie for all their lives. Submarshal Cathal, Aeld said. Thank you. I will be brief because I know that brevity buys trust and I need yours. He let a beat pass. On the unbroken meridian Yen Cathal found herself leaning forward. 300 of your cycles ago, Aeld said, a vessel of the Conquered Compact made contact with my species. It was a survey ship. Its captain was cautious, and its captain was wise, and after that single meeting your people chose to leave mine alone. I want you to understand that we noticed that choice. We noticed it, and we were grateful for it, and it is the reason I am speaking to you now instead of doing something you would like a great deal less. The words moved across the command deck like a cold current. Yen kept her face still. Beside her, Dav had gone very quiet at his station. In the 300 cycles since, Aeld went on, my people have not been idle, we have grown, we have spread, we have built. And we have watched this region of space, this corridor, this long slow standoff of yours from a distance you have not been able to measure because our instruments are not your instruments and our ships do not move the way yours move. He tilted his head slightly. You have seen that yourselves just now. My ship did not translate into this corridor. It arrived. There was no wake because we no longer make wakes. Consider what that means about the gap between your engines and mine, and then consider that this ship, the Sable Reckoning, is not the largest thing we build. She is a battleship. She is not a dreadnought. Do you understand me, Submarshal? I have come to your corridor in a ship we consider medium asterisk. It was a lie. The Reckoning was among the largest ships the Vanguard had ever laid down. But Aeld said it with the flat boredom of a man reciting a fact too obvious to be interesting, and he watched the submarshal's dark eyes, and he saw the lie land and take root. On the meridian Yen Cathal felt the cold thread in her chest pull taut. A ship that arrived without a wake. A ship whose mass read heavier than it should because, she thought now, whatever drove it and armored it was denser and stranger than anything in the Conquered's understanding. And this bristling slab, this fortress that had grown tired of standing still, was medium asterisk, was not even a dreadnought. She did not believe him entirely. She had not survived 40 cycles in the Thresh by believing anyone entirely. But she did not disbelieve him either, and in the space between belief and disbelief, a whole galaxy of dread could grow. Why, she said carefully, are you here, Lieutenant Commander? What does a medium human warship want in a conquered corridor? Aeld Voss looked at her across 4 light seconds of vacuum. 29 years old and 11 days a captain and 40 souls from the end of everything. And he smiled the smile he had practiced in the dark. I've come to give you a warning, he said, and I'm afraid you're all going to want to hear it. The warning, when it came, was not what anyone in the corridor expected. There is something in the western dark, Aeld Voss said, beyond the edge of your corridor, beyond the reach of your instruments. You call it the silent reach and you do not speak of it, and I understand why, because I have seen what lives there and I would prefer not to speak of it either. He paused, and for the first time the practiced flatness of his voice cracked, just slightly, and through the crack Yen Cathal saw something real, a genuine fear, quickly buried. 11 days ago, my ship encountered a fragment of it, a single tendril of the thing that watches you from the reach. It reached into my ship, and it took 2/3 of my crew before we broke free. I am telling you this because I want you to understand that when I speak of the reach, I speak as a survivor, and not as a theorist. On the meridian Dav made his small wet click again. Yen understood the sound now. It was the sound of a certainty coming apart. The silent reach is a legend, Yen said. A superstition. 4 fleets have watched that dark for 200 cycles and nothing has ever come out of it. Nothing has ever needed to come out of it, Aeld said. That is what you have failed to understand. It does not need to move, Submarshal, because it has been growing where it sits, and it has been waiting, and the reason your corridor has been so quiet for so long is not balance. It is caution. 4 fleets pressed together in a narrow lane, watching each other, none of you daring to move. Do you know what that looks like from the outside? It looks like prey that has bunched together at the mouth of the burrow. It looks like a meal that has arranged itself for the taking. And the thing in the reach has been patient, and it has been growing, and it is very nearly ready to move now, and when it does it will not care which flag you fly. There was a silence on the command deck of the unbroken Meridian asterisk, and it was the silence of 40 cycles of assumptions being pulled up by the roots. You expect me to believe, Yin said slowly, that a human battleship translated 300 cycles of silence into the most contested space in the sector to warn us about a bedtime story. I expect you to believe the evidence of your own instruments, Aeld said. Sensor officer, you've been scanning my hull since I arrived. Tell your sub-marshal what you found on the port flank. Yin turned. Dov's 4 hands had gone still. Damage, Dov said quietly. Sub-marshal, the human ship has damage along the port flank. I logged it when it turned. I assumed it was old. But it's the edges are wrong. The metal isn't cut or burned. It's the readings say it's asterisk dissolved. Something ate through 9 layers of that armor. I've never seen a weapon do that. I've never seen anything do that. Aeld Voss watched the sub-marshal absorb this, and he thought, now they believe part of it, and the part they believe is true, and that is the only kind of lie worth telling. Because that part was true. The wound in the reckoning asterisk-S flank was real. The thing in the dark was real. 11 days ago, it had reached out of the black between the spurs, and it had taken Commodore Hale and 400 souls, and Aeld had watched it happen from the 4th officer's station, and he would carry the sound of it for the rest of his life. He had not come to the Thresh to lie about that. He had come because the reckoning was crippled and undermanned and running for the nearest inhabited space, and this corridor had been the nearest inhabited space, and he had understood as he approached it that a lone crippled battleship limping into 4 hostile fleets would be torn apart in minutes, unless those 4 fleets could be made to believe it was something else, something larger, something they needed. So he had taken the true thing, the terrible thing in his ship's wake, and he had made it a weapon, not a threat, a shared enemy, the oldest trick there was and the only one that might work. Show them, Aeld said quietly, off the pickup to Petra Cole. Sorry. The wake data from the encounter. Clean it up, cut the parts that show our numbers and push it to the conquered ship. Let them see it. Petra's young face was pale in the sensor glow. Sir, that data shows what happened to the Commodore. It shows all of it. I know what it shows. Aeld did not look at her. He could not in that moment look at her. Cut the crew feeds, cut the casualty count, send them the thing in the dark and nothing else. Let them see the enemy and not the wound it made in us. He closed his eyes for half a second. Do it, Petra. The data arrived on the unbroken Meridian asterisk, like a cold hand closing around the command deck. It was raw sensor telemetry, the kind no fleet ever shared, and it showed the deep dark between the galactic spurs, and it showed a shape moving in that dark. The shape did not resolve. That was the horror of it. Yen Cathal had spent 40 cycles reading tactical displays, and she had never seen a contact that refused so completely to be a contact. It was there and not there. It was large and it was larger than large. The scale markers along the edge of the feed kept climbing and did not stop. And it moved, not with the clean vector of a ship under drive, but with a slow, questing, tidal creep, like a thing feeling its way through the dark toward something warm. And then, in the last seconds of the feed, it reached. A tendril of the not-there darkness extended, impossibly fast for something so vast, and it touched the edge of the frame where the recording ship must have been, and the feed dissolved into a chaos of alarms and cascading system failures, and then it cut to black. The command deck of the Meridian was silent for a long moment. Sub-Marshal, Syl said very quietly, the Velethi are requesting a channel, and the Ashen, and she hesitated. Submarshal, they all received the same data. The human broadcast it to the whole corridor. Every fleet in the Thresh just watched that. Yen Cathal closed her eyes. Of course he had. Of course the young human had broadcast it to everyone. He had not come to warn the conquered. He had come to warn the Asterisk corridor, to reach into 211 cycles of frozen standoff, and drop a single stone into the exact center of it. And now Yen could feel the ripples spreading, feel the whole delicate lethal balance of the Thresh beginning to shift, and she understood with a cold and perfect clarity that nothing in this corridor would ever be the same again. One ship, one young officer, one broadcast, and the galaxy's most stable standoff was coming apart in real time. Open them all, Yen said, every channel. Let's hear the chaos. The chaos was immediate, and it was total. Warlord Sesh of the Ashen Ascendancy came through first, his pale, segmented face filling half the display, his voice like grinding stone. Conquered vessel, you will explain the meaning of this broadcast. You will explain the meaning of this human appearing in our shared corridor, transmitting propaganda designed to break the peace. This is a conquered provocation. You have hidden this ally in the Western Dark, and now you unveil it to frighten us into concessions. It will not work, Cathal. The Ascendancy does not frighten. Before Yen could answer, the Velethi came through, Prime Talon Urveth, whose species communicated in a rapid clicking that the translator rendered as a kind of breathless urgency. Lies. All of it lies. The Ashen is right about one thing and wrong about the rest. This is a provocation, but not a conquered one. It is Ashen. They have manufactured this ghost ship, this dissolving armor theater, to justify a strike on the corridor while we all stare at a boogeyman in the dark. The Velethi Talons will not be caught looking the wrong way. Any Ashen movement toward the center will be met with immediate fire. There is no ghost ship, Warlord Sesh grated. There is a very real human vessel 4 light seconds from all of us, and I did not put it there. Then who did? Clicked Urveth. The Conquered, the Reach, yourself. Someone put it there, Warlord, and until I know who, my guns stay hot. And under it all, threaded through every channel, was the thing none of them said aloud, but all of them were thinking. The human said the thing in the Reach is nearly ready to move. What if it's true? What if it's true and we spend our last hours shooting at each other? Yen Cathal listened to 211 cycles of held breath finally let go, and she watched the tactical sphere, and what she saw there frightened her more than any words. The formations were shifting. The Velethi were spreading, repositioning to cover the center. The Ashen spine ships were rotating, bringing their long guns to bear, not on the human ship, she realized, but on each other, on the Conquered, on the shadows of their own suspicion. 200 cycles of frozen positions were thawing all at once, and a thaw in the Thresh meant only one thing. They're going to fire, Dav said. Submarshal, somebody in this corridor is going to fire in the next few minutes, and it won't matter who, because everyone's locked on everyone. One shot and the whole corridor goes up. Yen thought of the young human's tired gray-green eyes. I know I have arrived in a place where I am not expected. He had known exactly what he was doing. He had known that a single, unexpected arrival, dropped into a balance this fine, would send the whole thing into chaos. The only question was whether he had wanted the chaos, or whether the chaos was a fire he intended, somehow, to walk through. Get me the human, Yen said. Private channel now, Sil, cut the others. Aeld Voss's tired face reappeared, and Yen did not waste time. You have started a war, she said. In the space of 10 minutes you have taken the most stable standoff in the sector and set it on fire. The Ashen think you're a conquered weapon. The Velethi think you're an Ashen trick. Everyone thinks everyone else put you here, and in about 4 minutes somebody is going to prove a point with a torpedo, and when they do, 10,000 years of civilization ends in this corridor. Was that your intent, Lieutenant Commander? Did you come here to watch us kill each other? No, Aeld said, and the flat practice calm was gone from his voice entirely now, and what was underneath it was raw and young and exhausted. No, Sub-Marshal, that is the last thing I want. Listen to me. I need you to listen to me very carefully because I have made a mistake and I need your help to fix it. Yen went very still. Of everything the human might have said, an admission of error was the last she had expected. I thought, Aeld said, that if I showed you all the same enemy, you would stop pointing your guns at each other and point them at the dark instead. That's what I was taught. Show frightened powers a larger threat and they align. I thought it would be clean. I thought the truth of the thing in the reach would be enough. He shook his head, and the gesture was so human, so young, so tired that something in Yen's chest ached without her permission. I was wrong. I didn't understand your corridor. I didn't understand that you've been afraid of each other for 200 cycles and that fear that old doesn't turn outward when you frighten it. It turns inward. It looks for someone to blame that it can actually reach. And the thing in the reach, none of you can reach that. But you can all reach each other. So you admit it, Yen said. You've broken the balance. I've broken the balance, Aeld agreed. And now the thing in the reach is going to get exactly what it's been waiting 200 cycles for, 4 fleets tearing each other apart in a narrow lane, so weakened by the time it moves that it won't even have to hurry. His gray-green eyes were steady on hers. Unless you and I put it back together. Not the way it was. Better, fast, before somebody fires. And why, Yen said, would I trust the ghost who lit the fire to help me put it out? Because, Aeld Voss said, I'm the only one in this corridor with nothing to gain by lying to you now. And because you already believe me, Sub-Marshal, or you wouldn't have cut the others to talk to me alone. Yen Cathal looked at the young human across 4 light seconds of vacuum, and behind her the tactical sphere turned, and in it 4 fleets bared their teeth at one another, and somewhere in the western dark, a patient, enormous thing began, at last, to move. Tell me what you need, Yen said. It was not surrender. She wanted it understood in her own mind that it was not surrender. It was the choice a commander makes when every path leads off a cliff and one of them is at least lit. She had listened to the human's admission of error, and she had done the thing she had done for 40 cycles. She had weighed the speaker against the words. A liar who wanted to break the corridor would not have confessed to breaking it. A weapon of the Ashen or a trick of the Velethi would have pressed its advantage while the corridor burned. This young human had stopped the moment the fire spread wrong, and had turned around and reached for a bucket. That was not the behavior of a thing that wanted her dead. I need 3 things, Aeld said, and I need them fast. First, I need every fleet in this corridor to stop believing that someone put me here. As long as they think I'm a piece on someone's board, they'll fight over who owns the board. I need them to understand that I arrived alone, by my own choice, answering to no one in this corridor. Second, I need proof of the thing in the reach that none of them can dismiss as propaganda. The wake data wasn't enough. It only frightened them, and frightened powers with hot guns shoot the nearest target. I need them to see it coming, so the nearest target stops being each other. And third, he hesitated, and Yen saw the weight of it cross his young face. Third, I need you to trust me with the position of your fleets for the next hour. Because I have a way to buy this corridor time, and it will not work if your ships are pointed at mine. You're asking me to lower my guard to an unknown warship in the middle of a crisis you created. Yes, Aeld said simply. I am, and I know exactly how that sounds. I'm asking anyway, because the alternative is that the 4 of you finish what my arrival started, and the thing in the dark eats the survivors. Yen was quiet for a moment. On the sphere, a Velethi gunship had drifted 100 kilometers toward the conquered line, testing, and a conquered destroyer had matched it, and the whole corridor held its breath along that one thin line of contact. One nervous gunner. That was all it would take now. The first thing, she said. The belief that no one owns you. How do I give them that? You don't, Aeld said. I do. But I need you to open the channel and vouch that what I'm about to show them is real, because they won't believe it from me, and they will from you. 200 cycles of hating each other, Sub-Marshal, but they've spent those cycles learning to read each other's honesty. They know when Yen Cathal is lying. Aren't I right? He was right, and the fact that a 300-cycle stranger understood the corridor's grammar of trust that well was its own small terror. "Show me first," Yen said, "before I vouch for anything I see it." "Fair." Aeld turned his head. "Petra, give the sub-marshal the origin log, all of it, unedited." On the *meridian*, a new stream of data unspooled across Yen's console, and this time it was not the thing in the dark. It was the Sable reckoning herself, her own logs, her own sensors, the record of her own passage. And Yen, reading it with 40 cycles of tactical instinct, understood what she was being shown. She was being shown the ship's true track, not a fleet trailing behind it, not a conquered handler, not an Ashen puppeteer. A single vessel alone, crossing an impossible gulf of empty space from the far spur, running dark and silent and wounded, with no support, no reinforcement, no fleet at its back. And she understood, reading it, that the young human had just handed her the truth he had spent the last hour hiding from everyone else. There was no armada behind him. There was no *medium* class of ship with dreadnoughts waiting in reserve. There was this. One battleship, crippled along the port flank, alone in the dark. The bluff she had half believed was a bluff, and he had just proven it to her, deliberately, because he needed her to vouch for him, and he would not ask her to vouch for a lie. "You're alone," Yen said quietly. "There's no fleet, there never was a fleet." "There's no fleet," Aeld agreed, and his voice was very tired. "There's 41 of us in a ship that's dying by centimeters. Everything I told the corridor about my people's power, the ships that arrive without wakes, the fleets watching from the dark, the battleship we consider medium, I made most of it larger than it is. Not all. The drive is real. The armor is real. What lives in the Reach is real, and it is exactly as terrible as I said. But the strength of my people in this corridor right now is one wounded ship and a boy who was fourth in line and is now first because everyone above him is dead." He looked at her. "I'm telling you this, Sub-Marshal, because you asked me why you should trust the ghost who lit the fire. This is why. I've just put my ship's life in your hands. If you tell the corridor what I really am, they'll finish me in 90 seconds. I'm giving you that power because I need you to know I'm not playing you. I'm out of games. I'm just trying to keep 40 people and a corridor full of strangers alive for one more day." Yen Cathal looked at the truth on her console, the lone track, the wounded ship, the 41 souls, and she looked at the young human's exhausted face, and she made the second decision that would define the rest of her life. "I won't tell them," she said, "any of it. As far as the Thresh is concerned, you command the vanguard of a human armada, and I've seen the fleet behind you, and it is vast." She straightened. "But that's the last lie I carry for you, Lieutenant Commander. From here we do this with the truth that matters, which is the thing in the dark. Show me your plan to buy time. And it had better be good, because the corridor is 30 seconds from firing." Something crossed Aeld Voss's young face then, relief and gratitude, and under those a flicker of something that might have been hope. "Thank you," he said. "Truly. Now listen, because this is the part where it gets difficult." The plan was audacious, and it was thin, and it depended on a lie that was also, at its heart, a truth. "The thing in the Reach is real," Aeld said, "and it's moving now. My instruments picked up the shift the moment the corridor started coming apart. It felt the fear. It always feels the fear, that's how it hunts. So here's what we do. We don't try to convince 4 fleets to trust each other. That's impossible on this timescale. 200 cycles of suspicion doesn't dissolve in an hour. Instead, we give them something to point at that isn't each other. We give them the thing in the dark, not as a story, not as leaked data, but as a target asterisk. Real resolved on every tactical sphere in the corridor at the same instant. You can do that. My ship can. The Reckoning S sensor suite is built to see the thing that made it. It's the one thing we can still do better than anyone in this corridor. Give me your fleet positions and I'll network my array through your fire control grids, All 4 of them, if they'll let me, and I'll paint the reach for everyone at once. When they see it coming, resolved, undeniable on their own screens through their own systems, they'll stop believing it's propaganda. You can't argue with a contact on your own grid. And then, Yin said, you've painted the enemy. 4 fleets that hate each other are all staring at the same dark. That's not peace, Lieutenant Commander. That's 4 cornered animals in one room with a wolf at the door. No, Aeld agreed. It's not peace, but it's a distraction, and distraction is all I need because the second part of the plan is the part I do alone. He drew a breath. The thing in the reach hunts fear. It moves toward the largest, brightest concentration of it. Right now that's this corridor, 4 terrified fleets bunched in a narrow lane. So I'm going to give it something brighter to move toward. I'm going to take the reckoning out to the western edge, alone, running my drive hot and loud, no more silence, and I'm going to make my 1 wounded ship look like the most frightened, most valuable, most alive thing in this whole region of space. And it will turn toward me. And when it does, it'll turn away from the corridor. And that will buy all of you the hours you need to pull your fleets apart, stand down your guns, and run for the deeper systems before it finishes with me and comes looking for the rest. The command deck of the unbroken Meridian had gone completely silent. Even Dov had stopped moving. You're describing bait, Yin said slowly. You're describing making yourself bait. 1 wounded ship, 41 souls, drawing the thing in the reach onto itself so the corridor can escape. I'm describing the only version of this where most people live, Aeld said. Yes, it's bait. It's 41 people buying time for however many thousands are in this corridor. I've run the numbers, Sub-Marshal. I've run them 100 times in 11 days. There's no version where the reckoning survives the thing in the reach. We barely survived a single tendril of it. So if we're going to die anyway, I would rather we die drawing it away from a corridor full of people than die in the crossfire of a war I started by accident. He almost smiled. I told you I came to give you a warning. I didn't tell you the warning was going to cost me the ship. Yen Cathal stared at the young human, 29 years old, 11 days a captain, calmly proposing to spend his life and the lives of everyone under his command to save a corridor full of strangers who had spent the last hour accusing him of everything. And she felt the whole architecture of her understanding rearrange itself. She had spent 40 cycles believing she knew what a warship was. A warship was a threat. A warship was leverage. A warship was the thing you pointed at your enemies to make them afraid. And now there was a warship 4 light seconds off her bow, and its young master was proposing to use it not as a threat but as a shield, to stand between a corridor full of strangers and the dark, and to burn. No, she said. Aeld blinked, Sub-Marshal. I heard you, now hear me. Yin stepped closer to the pickup and something had changed in her voice. Some old cold weariness burned away. You are a boy who was 4th in line and you have carried this alone for 11 days, and you have already decided that the only way this ends is with you dead. I understand that. I have watched young officers decide that 100 times and half of them were right. But you have made an error, Lieutenant Commander, the same error you made when you broke my corridor. You've assumed you're alone. You've assumed the only ship in the Thresh worth spending is yours. She let that land. You are not alone anymore. You came to my corridor to warn me, and you've done it. And now the corridor is my problem, and I don't intend to solve it by letting a wounded stranger die alone in the dark while the rest of us run. That is not how the conquered fights. That is not how I fight. For a moment Aeld Voss could not speak. He had crossed an impossible gulf braced for exactly one outcome, that he would die alone and unmourned, drawing the horror away from people who would never know his name. He had not, in 11 days, allowed himself to imagine any other outcome, because imagining one and being wrong would have broken him. And now, a conquered Sub-Marshal was looking at him across 4 light seconds and telling him flatly that she would not let him do it alone. Then what, he managed, do you propose, Sub-Marshal? Yen Cathal turned to her tactical sphere, and for the first time in a very long time she felt the yoke of the corridor lift from her shoulders, not because the weight was gone, but because, for the first time in 40 cycles, she was not carrying it alone. "I propose," she said, "that we stop running from the thing in the dark. I propose that we do the one thing it has never seen 4 fleets do, the one thing 200 cycles of fear has made unthinkable. I propose that we turn around, all of us together, and we make it afraid of us. She looked back at the pickup. "You painted them an enemy, Lieutenant Commander. Now help me turn 4 terrified fleets into a wall. Help me do what your people apparently do best. Help me make the whole galaxy afraid to see a warship coming, and let it be ours." Convincing 4 fleets to stop pointing their guns at each other was, Yen Cathal would reflect later, the hardest thing she had ever done, and she had done it in 19 minutes. She did not do it with reason. Reason was too slow, and the corridor had no patience left. She did it with the humans' array. "Lieutenant Commander," she said, on an open channel now, every fleet listening, "network your sensors through the conquered fire control grid. I'm authorizing the handshake. Warlord Sesh, Prime Talon Urveth, I am about to show you something, and I am staking my honor and my command on it being true. Watch your own screens. Not mine. Yours. In 60 seconds, you will each resolve a contact in the Western Dark on your own systems, through your own instruments, and when you do, you will understand that the corridor's problem was never each other." "This is a conquered trick," Warlord Sesh grated. "You will not network anything through Ascendancy fire control. We would be blind to our own guns." "Then stay blind to mine," Yen said. "The human's array doesn't need your permission to paint a contact your passive sensors can see. It needs your permission to paint it on your grid asterisk. Refuse, and you'll see it 30 seconds later than everyone else, and you'll spend those 30 seconds wondering why the Velethi are already turning their guns west." She let the silence stretch. "Your choice, Warlord. The Reach doesn't care how proud you are." On the Sable Reckoning, Aeld Voss watched the submarshal work and felt something he had not expected to feel again. He felt like he was watching a master at her craft. He had spent 11 days believing that the only thing standing between the corridor and catastrophe was a 19-year-old sensor officer and a 29-year-old boy pretending to be a Commodore. And here, 4 light seconds away, was someone who had held a knife-edge piece together for 40 years, and she was reaching into the exact fear he had unleashed and turning it, one careful sentence at a time, from a fire into a tool. "Petra," he said quietly, "networks live with the conquered grid. Velethi are handshaking they're in, Ashen's holding out." He watched. "Come on, Warlord. Don't be the last one blind in the room." The Ashen handshake completed with 4 seconds to spare, and every fire control grid in the Thresh corridor lit with the same contact at the same instant, and the corridor stopped breathing. Because they saw it, all of them at once through their own systems, in the grammar of their own tactical displays that they trusted more than they trusted anything alive. The thing in the Reach, resolved as far as it could be resolved, a vast, questing tidal darkness, larger than the scale markers could hold, creeping out of the western black toward the massed fear of 4 fleets. It was no longer a story. It was no longer leaked human propaganda. It was a contact on the Ashen grid and the Velethi grid and the Conquered grid. Undeniable, closing, real. The channels erupted, and then, for the first time in the history of the crisis, they went quiet. Not the frozen quiet of the standoff. A different quiet. The quiet of enemies who have just been shown a wall of water and understood, all at once, that the argument about who owns the beach is over. Submarshal Cathal, Prime Talon Urveth clicked, and the breathless urgency was gone from the Velethi's voice, replaced by something flat and cold. "The Velethi Talons see the contact. We withdraw our accusation against the Ascendancy." A pause. "Provisionally." "The Ascendancy sees it also," Warlord Sesh grated. "Cathal, what is your intent? You did not show us this to watch us run." "You conquered never do anything without a lever," What is the lever? Yen Cathal looked at the thing in the dark on her own sphere, and she looked at the young human's ship holding its lonely position at the corridor's edge, and she gave them the lever. My intent, she said, is that we do not run. Running is what it wants. Running is what it has been herding us toward for 200 cycles, 4 fleets so afraid of each other that we bunch together in a narrow lane and wait to be eaten. Well, we are done being herded. She brought the corridor's full tactical picture up on the shared grid, every ship of every fleet, and beside it she laid the thing in the dark, and beside that she laid a single formation she had spent the last 4 minutes building in her head. The Reach hunts fear. The human's data proves it, and 40 cycles of watching that dark confirms it. It does not move on courage. It has never once in 200 cycles moved on courage because it has never once seen any. So we show it courage. We form one line. Conquered Velethi Ashen together, guns out, facing the dark. Not 4 frightened fleets, one wall. And we make the thing in the Reach do the calculation it has never had to do, whether the meal is worth the fight. Madness, Warlord Sesh said, but he did not say no. You want the ascendancy to form a line beside the Velethi we have hated for 200 cycles, Urveth clicked. Beside the conquered that has kept us penned in this corridor. You want us to trust that when the guns come out, they point west and not at each other. I want you to be smarter than the thing in the dark thinks you are, Yen said. It believes it knows you. It believes it has watched you for 200 cycles and learned that you would rather die suspicious than live allied. Prove it wrong. Do the one thing it cannot predict. She paused. And I'll give you a reason you can trust, Warlord, since you asked for the lever. The human battleship holds the point of the line, the center, the most exposed position, the first thing the Reach reaches for. If this is a conquered trick, then I've put my newest and most powerful ally in the spot where it dies first. Does that look like a trick to you? Or does it look like someone who intends to fight? On the Sable Reckoning, Aeld Voss heard the submarshal volunteer his crippled ship for the point of the line, the most exposed position, the first thing the horror would reach for, and he understood what she was doing. She was spending him the same way he had proposed to spend himself, but she was doing it in the open, in front of the whole corridor, so that his sacrifice bought not just time but trust asterisk. She had taken his plan to die alone in the dark, and turned it into a reason for 4 fleets to stand together. She's using us as the anchor, Petra said quietly. Sir, the point of the line. That's the killing position. I know. Aeld looked at the thing in the dark on his own display, closer now, close enough that the Reckoning Asterisk S specialized array was beginning to resolve details no other ship in the corridor could see, the way it moved, the way it fed Asterisk, the terrible patient hunger of it. But she's right, Petra. It's the position that makes the wall believable. If the frightening new ship stands at the front, everyone else can stand behind it and pretend they're brave. He straightened in the master's chair. Signal the submarshal. Tell her the Asterisk Sable Reckoning accepts the point of the line. He paused and added, because it was true and because 41 people deserve to hear their captain say something true. Tell her the Vanguard doesn't leave a wall it helped build. The line formed over the next 40 minutes, and it was the most extraordinary thing that had ever happened in the Thresh corridor. And every commander who lived through it would spend the rest of their lives failing to explain it to those who had not been there. 211 cycles of hatred did not dissolve. That was the thing the histories always got wrong. The Velethi did not forgive the Ashen. The Ashen did not forget the Conquered's long containment. When the Velethi gunships slid into position on the northern flank of the wall and the Ashen spine ships anchored the south, every gunner on every ship kept one eye on the dark and one eye on the alien vessels beside them, and the suspicion did not go anywhere. It simply became, for the length of one impossible night, less important than the thing in the west. That was what Aeld Voss learned, watching it form from the point of the line. He had thought, in his youth and his exhaustion, that the way you united frightened powers was to make them trust each other. He'd been wrong about that in the first hour, and the wrongness had nearly burned the corridor down. What Yen Cathal understood, what 40 cycles had taught her, was that you did not need trust. You needed only a threat large enough and near enough that cooperation became the selfish choice. You did not ask enemies to love each other. You asked them to want the same thing to die, for one night, more than they wanted each other dead. The line's holding, Petra reported, wonder in her young voice. Sir, they're all in position. Conquered center north, Velethi far north, Ashen south, and us. We're the point, she swallowed. The contact's at 2 light seconds in closing. It's slowing down. Aeld leaned forward, slowing. Slowing, it came out of the reach fast. It felt the corridor fall apart. It came for the fear. But now, Petra's hands moved. Now the corridor isn't falling apart. Now it's a wall. And the thing in the dark is doing something it's never done in any of our records, sir. It's hesitating asterisk. Yen Cathal, on the unbroken meridian saw the same thing, and she felt a savage hope kindle in her chest. The thing in the reach had spent 200 cycles learning one lesson about the corridor, that the powers within it would always turn on each other before they turned on anything else. It had built its entire hunt around that certainty, and now the certainty had broken. Now there was a wall where there should have been a scramble, and the vast patient hunger in the dark did not know what to do with a wall. It's afraid, Yen breathed. Look at it, it doesn't understand what it's seeing. We've done the one thing it never predicted, and it's afraid. Don't celebrate, came Aeld's voice on the command channel, tight and low. Sub-Marshal, it's hesitating, yes, but it's not leaving, and I can see it better than any of you from here, and I need to tell you what I'm seeing because it changes things. A pause, and in that pause Yen heard the young human gather himself for something terrible. It's not one thing. The wall made it stop, and stopping made it unfold. It's not a single creature, it's a swarm. Thousands of tendrils, each one big enough to gut a spineship, all moving together, all controlled by something at the center I still can't resolve. The wall frightened the whole asterisk of it, but a swarm that size doesn't retreat because it's frightened. It retreats or it commits asterisk. And Sub-Marshal, Aeld Voss's voice was very quiet and very steady and very young. I think we just frightened it into committing. Before the swarm committed, there was a window of 9 minutes, and in those 9 minutes the Thresh corridor lived a lifetime. Yen Cathal had known, when she asked 4 fleets to form a wall, that the wall was a thing made of nerve and nothing else. There was no treaty binding it. There was no shared command. There were only 10,000 years of accumulated hatred, held in check by a fear newer and larger than any of them, and every second that fear held was a second the whole structure could shatter. She had built the line, and now she had to keep it standing, and she discovered very quickly that keeping it standing was harder than building it. The first crack came from the Velethi. Conquered vessel. It was not Prime Talon Urveth this time. It was a sub-commander, one of Urveth's talons, and the clicking that came through the translator was fast and frightened. A Velethi gunship on the northern flank reports Ashen targeting sensors sweeping its hull. The ascendancy is painting us. We hold the line facing the dark and the Ashen paint our backs. This is what we said would happen. This is the trap. It's not a trap, Yen said, and she said it fast before the crack could spread. Warlord Sesh, your ships are sweeping the Velethi flank. Stop them. My ships sweep everything that moves, Sesh grated. That is called caution, Cathal. We did not agree to blind ourselves to our oldest enemy merely because you have found us a new one. Then sweep the dark, Yen said. Sweep the thing that's going to gut all of us in 8 minutes. You have exactly as many sensors as you need and not one to spare, and every array you point at a Velethi hull is an array you're not pointing at the reach. That's not caution, Warlord. That's the thing in the dark reaching into your fleet and turning your own suspicion into a knife it doesn't even have to hold. She let the words bite. It's been doing that for 200 cycles. It's doing it right now. Don't let it. There was a silence, and then the Ashen targeting sweeps pulled off the Velethi flank one by one and turned west. It was not trust. It was arithmetic, but arithmetic Yin was learning was enough. On the Sable reckoning, Aeld Voss watched the wall flex and hold and flex again, and he understood what he was seeing, and it humbled him. He had thought in his arrogance and his exhaustion that he had brought the corridor its salvation, the drive that left no wake, the array that could see the dark, the warning no one else could give. And all of that was real and all of it mattered. But none of it would have been worth anything without the thing Yen Cathal was doing right now, which was the unglamorous, invisible, ceaseless work of talking a wall into staying up one more minute, and then one more, while the horror closed in. He had brought the corridor a weapon. She was the one wielding it. "Petra," he said, "give me a private line to the sub-marshal, just her." "Lines up, sir." "Sub-Marshal Cathal." He kept his voice low off the fleet channels. "I need to tell you something, and I need to tell you now, in case the next 9 minutes go the way they might." "I'm listening, Lieutenant Commander." Yen's voice was tight with the strain of holding the line, but she made room for him. "When I came here," Aeld said, "I had a plan, and the plan was to make you all so afraid of my people that no one would dare shoot me. I was going to be the vanguard of an armada that doesn't exist, and it nearly burned your corridor down, and I've spent the last hour ashamed of it." He paused. "But I've been watching you hold this wall together, and I want you to know the thing I was pretending to be, the thing I dressed my ship up as, the great terrible human power that the whole galaxy should fear, that's not the frightening thing. You are. Not because you're stronger, because you can do this. You can take 200 cycles of hate and hold it in one hand and point it at the dark. My people build ships that leave no wake. You build walls out of enemies. I don't think there's a weapon in the galaxy more dangerous than that, and I wanted you to know I'd seen it before." "Before nothing," Yen said sharply. "You're not finishing that sentence, Lieutenant Commander. Save it. When this is over you can tell me all of it at length over whatever your people drink." Her voice softened by a fraction. "But I heard you, and I'll tell you a thing in return, and then we both get back to work. For 40 cycles I believed I was holding this corridor alone. I believed that was what command was, carrying the weight where no one could see it so that no one else had to. You arrived without warning and you broke my corridor into chaos, and I hated you for it for about an hour. A breath. And then I realized you'd done the one thing I never could. You made the weight visible. You made it so I didn't have to carry it in the dark anymore. So whatever happens in the next 9 minutes, thank you for that. Now hold your position. The point of the line is yours." "The point of the line is mine," Aeld Voss agreed, and cut the private channel and turned back to the dark. The second crack came from the Ashen, and it was worse. "Cathal," Warlord Sesh's voice had changed. Something in it had gone brittle. "The Ascendancy flagship's forward sensors have resolved the swarm's mass. Do you have this figure? Do you understand what we are facing? Our combined firepower, all 4 fleets, everything, fired continuously. Our own analysts calculate a 40% probability of stopping it. 40%, Cathal. 6 chances in 10 we die on this wall. My officers are asking why we do not withdraw to the deeper systems while we still can. And I confess to you, on an open channel in front of my enemies, that I do not have an answer they will accept." The corridor heard it. Every fleet heard the Ashen warlord admit openly that his own people were asking to run. And Yen Cathal felt the wall shudder along its whole length, felt the nerve of 10,000 crews waver at once, because a wall is only as strong as the belief holding it, and belief had just been handed a number. She did not have a better number. That was the terrible thing. Her own analysts had run the same math and reached the same 40%, and 40% was not a wall-holding number. It was a run number, and she knew it, and Sesh knew it, and in 3 seconds the whole corridor would know it and break. It was Aeld Voss who answered before she could. "Warlord Sesh." The young human's voice came across every channel, calm and clear. "Your analysts are right. 40% firing as a wall, that's a good calculation, and I won't insult you by pretending otherwise." A pause. But your analysts ran the wrong battle. They ran the battle where you fire at a swarm. That battle you lose 6 times in 10. I'm offering you a different battle. You don't fire at the swarm. You fire at the center, the one point that holds all of it together, and you fire at it because my array will mark it for you, and no swarm survives losing its center. Rerun the math with a marked center and a single convergent firing solution. Go on. I'll wait. There was a silence, and then on the Ashen channel, Yen heard a sub-voice, one of Sesh's analysts, forgetting to close the line in his haste, say a number, and the number was not 40. 91%, Warlord Sesh said slowly. If the center is marked, if the mark holds, if we fire as one. A long pause, and when the stone-ground voice came back, it had steadied. Human, can you mark the center? I can mark the center, Eld Voss said. It's the last thing my ship will ever do, but I can do it. Hold the wall, Warlord. Give me the wall and I'll give you the shot. And the wall held, not because the fear was gone, because the young human had done the thing Yin had done a dozen times in the last hour, had reached into a number that meant despair and turned it, with nothing but nerve and truth, into a number that meant hope. 91%. It was still a lie in its way. Nothing about the next 9 minutes was certain. But it was a lie in the direction of courage, and the corridor took it and stood. Yen Cathal watched the wall steady along its whole length, Concord and Velethi and Ashen, 10,000 crews holding their positions against a horror 200 cycles in the making, and she looked at the small dark shape of the sable reckoning at the point of the line, and she thought, he did it again. He keeps doing it. He keeps finding the exact place where the whole thing is about to break, and he keeps putting his own body in it. 6 minutes, Dav said quietly. Sub-Marshal, the swarm's at the commit threshold. Whatever it's going to do, it does it now. Then we're as ready as we'll ever be, Yen said. She straightened, and she looked at the western dark, and she felt beneath the fear, beneath the impossible odds, beneath 40 cycles of carrying the corridor alone, something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt like she was not going to lose. The thing in the reach committed. It came out of the western dark like a tide reversing, thousands of tendrils unfolding all at once, and the corridors shared grid-lit red from edge to edge, as the contact that had been one questing point became a wall of its own, a black wall, rushing to meet the wall of ships. Every sensor officer in the Thresh screamed the same warning at the same instant. Every gunner on every ship of every fleet felt the ancient animal urge to break, to scatter, to run, because running was what prey did, and for 200 cycles the corridor had been prey. Hold the line, Yen Cathal said, and her voice went out on every channel, cold and clear and absolute. Hold. It wants you to run. It has always wanted you to run. Hold the line and let it break itself on us. It's too big, Warlord Sesh grated, and for the first time the stone in his voice had cracked. Cathal, it's too big, our guns will not. Your guns don't have to stop it, Eld Voss cut in, and the point of the line, the sable reckoning, crippled, undermanned 41 souls, began to move forward, out ahead of the wall, into the gap between the fleets and the oncoming dark. They only have to hurt it. Listen to me, all of you. I've fought this thing. My ship is the only ship in this corridor that has asterisk survived asterisk touching it, and I'm going to tell you how you kill it, and then I'm going to show you. His voice was steady, and it was young, and it carried the whole weight of 11 days and 400 dead. It's a swarm, but it has a center, a mind, a heart, whatever it is, the thing that holds all the tendrils together. Cut the center and the tendrils die. My array can see the center. None of yours can. So here's what happens now. I take the asterisk reckoning into the swarm alone, and I paint the center for you, and every gun in this corridor fires on the point I mark. You won't be firing at a wall of dark. You'll be firing at one spot. And when it dies, all of it dies. That's suicide, Yen said, and she heard her own voice break, and she did not care. Ailed, you'll be inside it. You'll be surrounded. The moment you paint that center, you'll have every tendril it has coming down on your ship. You won't survive long enough to see it work." "I know," HFY said quietly, "but my ship will survive long enough to mark asterisk it, and that's the part that matters." A pause. "Sub-Marshal, you told me I wasn't alone anymore. You were right, and I can't tell you what that meant to hear. But there's 41 of us and there's 10,000 of you, and I've done the numbers, and this is the version where the wall holds and the corridor lives. Let me do the thing I came here to do. Let me be the warship you're all afraid of, pointed at the right enemy for once." And then, before Yin could answer, before anyone could stop him, the Sable Reckoning lit her drive hot and loud, no more silence, no more ghost, and drove straight into the heart of the dark. What happened next would be told in the corridor for 1,000 years, and no telling ever did it justice. The asterisk Sable Reckoning went into the swarm like a blade into water, and the water closed around it. From the wall, the fleets watched a single ship vanish into a churning black immensity, watched the tendrils fold over it, watched the vast dark thing turn all its ancient hunger onto the one bright frightened morsel that had dared to swim into its mouth. And on every grid in the corridor, a single point of light appeared in the center of the dark, clean, precise, unwavering, the mark, the center, the heart, painted by an array that only one ship in the galaxy carried, transmitted through fire control grids that 4 hours ago had been aimed at each other. "Target marked," came HFY's voice, and it was calm and it was ragged, and behind it Yin could hear the reckoning asterisk dying, could hear the shriek of armor dissolving and the roar of atmosphere venting, and under it all the young voice of Petra Cole calling out failures in the flat cadence of someone who had decided to be brave to the end. "Sub-Marshal, conquered, Velethi, ascendancy. The center is marked. It won't hold long. Fire everything. Fire now asterisk." "All fleets," Yin Cathal said, and there were tears in her large dark eyes and her voice did not waver at all. "On the human's mark, everything you have, fire." The Thresh corridor became a single weapon. 200 cycles of guns that had never once been fired in anger, guns built to threaten and deter and hold a knife-edge peace. All of them spoke at once, and they spoke into a single point. Velethi lances and Ashen spinal cannon and conquered broadsides, 10,000 years of civilization's accumulated capacity for violence, all of it converging on one clean point of light in the heart of the dark, the point the young human had marked with his ship and his crew and his life. The center of the swarm took the full weight of 4 fleets, and it came apart. It did not die quietly. Nothing that old and that vast dies quietly. It threw its tendrils wide in a final convulsion that swatted 3 ships from the wall and cracked the Ashen flagship's spine, and it howled across every frequency the corridor could hear, a sound with no bottom to it, the sound of a hunger 200 cycles old realizing it had finally, fatally, misjudged its prey. And then the center that held it all together, the mind, the heart, whatever it had been, guttered and burst under the converging fire, and the 1,000 tendrils that had been reaching for the wall lost the thing that moved them, and went slack and drifted, and began, slowly, to dissolve into the dark from which they'd come. The thing in the reach was dead. The corridor had killed it. 4 fleets that had hated each other for 211 cycles had killed it together, on the mark of a lone human battleship, and the Western Dark was, for the first time in the memory of anyone living, simply dark. Empty, safe. And in the center of the dying swarm, where the Sable Reckoning had been, there was nothing. They found her 4 hours later, and Yin Cathal was on the first ship to reach the wreck. The asterisk Sable Reckoning had not been destroyed. That was the thing that stopped Yin's breath when the conquered recovery ship's lights swept across the hull. She had expected debris. She had expected to be gathering the dead. Instead, the great dark slab of the battleship hung in the empty dark, gutted and torn and half dissolved along a dozen surfaces, drive dead, power failing, air venting from 100 wounds, but whole asterisk, still whole, a fortress that had grown tired of standing still and had refused even now to fall. And inside it, in a bridge sealed off behind a dozen failed bulkheads, running on the last of the ship's reserves, 31 living souls. They had lost 10 more in the swarm. They had not lost them all. The reckoning had marked the center and then, instead of dying, had done the one thing the numbers said it could not. It had endured, armor holding by centimeters, crew fighting for every bulkhead, while 4 fleets killed the thing around it. It had gone into the dark to die, and it had come out the other side barely, impossibly, still flying. Yen found Aeld Voss on the ruined bridge in the master's chair, and he was on his feet when she came through the emergency lock, though it plainly cost him everything to be. He was gray with exhaustion, and there was blood at his temple, and his uniform was scorched, and he was 29 years old, and he looked at the sub-marshal of the conquered compact with tired gray-green eyes and something in them she had not seen there before. Not fear, not the practiced calm of a boy lying for his life. Something quieter. Something like the beginning of rest. "Sub-marshal," he said, "I'll be honest with you since we're done with the other thing. I didn't expect to be having this conversation." "Neither did I," Yen said, and to her own surprise her voice was thick. "You were supposed to die out there, Lieutenant Commander. You decided. I saw you decide it." "I had." A faint, exhausted smile. "It seems the ship disagreed. She's harder to kill than I am." He glanced around the ruined bridge, at the 30 exhausted faces of his crew, at 19-year-old Petra Cole slumped at her station with the corridor's survival written in her sensor logs. "We all disagreed in the end." Yen Cathal looked at the young human, and behind him through the shattered viewport she could see the wall that still held, Concord and Velethi and Ashen, guns cooling, formation loosening now into something that was not quite an alliance and would never quite be friendship, but was, undeniably, no longer 4 fleets waiting to be eaten. 211 cycles of frozen fear, broken in a single night by the arrival of one unexpected ship. She had watched the whole galaxy's balance fall into chaos the moment, his hull marking resolved on her screen. And she understood now that the chaos had been the point. Not the chaos he'd caused by accident, but the older, deeper chaos he'd broken by design. The chaos of enemies too frightened of each other to see the dark closing in. "You know what they'll say," she told him. "In the corridor, in the histories, they'll say a lone human battleship appeared without warning and the whole galaxy fell into chaos." She paused. "They won't understand for a long time that the chaos was the thing that saved us, that the balance had to break before we could stand up." "Let them say what they want," Aeld Voss said. He looked very young and very tired and finally, for the first time in 11 days, unafraid. "I didn't come here to be understood. I came here to give a warning." The smile again, faint and real. "I suppose I'll settle for being alive to see it heard." The asterisk sable reckoning was towed to the Concord's deepest yards, and her 31 survivors were given honors that no human had ever received in the recorded history of 4 empires, and Aeld Voss, who had been 4th in line, and had become first because everyone above him was dead, and had held a lie together long enough to turn it into a wall, was given something rarer still. He was given a place in a corridor that had at last stopped being afraid. And in the western dark, where the silent reach had watched and hungered for 211 cycles, there was only the clean and ordinary emptiness of space, and the slow, patient light of stars, and the memory, carried on every fleet in the sector, of the night a single warship arrived without warning, broke the whole galaxy's balance, and taught 4 terrified powers that the most frightening thing they could ever become was not each other, but a wall, standing together, facing the dark.